Now, in Texas, a man in Texas is suing the parent company of Sunglass Hut for $10 million for being falsely identified as the suspect in a robbery. 61-year-old Harvey Murphy Jr. was thrown in jail for a crime he didn't commit. While in prison, horrifically, he was gang raped by 3 men. Now, the company used AI and facial recognition software to determine that Murphy was the robber, but of course he wasn't. This was a huge miscarriage of justice. And joining me now is the broadcaster, futurist and AI expert, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, welcome to the show again. This is a harrowing story, Andrew, and one that will ask big questions about AI software and facial recognition, and can it be trusted?
No, you're absolutely right to question everything. And the important thing to recognize on this, Martin, is that it was just a tool to help in the investigation. When you dig a bit deeper into the story, they say that they only had a very old photo of the relevant person. The cameras in the store were pretty shoddy and not doing very, very good quality. But what happened is they then looked at the database of images and came up with this particular person's name as a suspect. So all that would then do is say, look, within our areas of inquiries, we should be looking at this particular person, ask about them and so on and so forth. Now, the evidence seems to suggest, from what I've seen in the reports, that the person was several miles away, and there were various other things. So they had an alibi and so on and so forth. They weren't allowed an identity parade, and there were various other things. And there was even suggestions that they were told, one of the witnesses was told to identify this particular person. So there's all sorts of things. And I always say artificial intelligence is a very helpful tool, but it is a tool and other elements need to be brought into play to make sure you have those safeguards.
But Andrew, actually, he was 1,900 miles away. He was in a different state. He was in Sacramento, California. This crime took place in Houston, Texas. And isn't this just an example, once again, a bit like the Horizon scandal in the post office? We seem to believe everything technology tells us, when really it's just a tool and we shouldn't slavishly adhere to it.
But I think that's absolutely right. And as I say, what it was doing is saying, OK, here are some people we should be talking to. And that's what they should have done. It sounds as though the other processes, as you would do with any criminal case, were not followed. So getting the statements, working out, does he have an alibi, works on that sort of premise. So the whole idea about artificial intelligence is to eliminate a number of other things to make it more efficient. But obviously, it's not going to be the be-all and the end-all. They had very old photos. It was a camera which was not as good as it could be, so not as sharp. And the person, it sounds as though, had an excellent alibi. So all of those things should have been brought into evidence, and he could have been eliminated very early on from inquiries.
The fact of the matter is, Andrew, whether we like it or not, and many people don't, facial recognition technology will be an increasing part out of law and order. Cameras are all over the place now in major cities. You can't move around London without getting scanned seemingly for every single misdemeanor, or indeed even when you're passively walking down the street or driving. We're all being monitored and scanned all the time. The police now want to put driving licence photographs onto the crime database. The National Crime Agency can cross-reference. That means we're all potentially at the risk of being wrongly identified unless we're very, very careful.
Oh, yes, you absolutely. And we should always, as I always urge people to do, is question everything. That what happens is this is to basically whittle down the list of suspects. It's the difficulty as well, Martin, is that it's not just about the facial recognition, but it's also how people walk. They are using this to identify potential criminals, saying, well, people with these particular facial characteristics have been known to commit crime in the past. Now, that's got all sorts of biases in it, which needs to be looked at. But what I say about artificial intelligence, it's learning all of the time, and those imperfections are basically getting refined. There are biases and discrimination that need to be looked at. But as I emphasize throughout, it is a tool, and it's a tool in an investigation. If you have no suspects and you've got a whole pool of zillions of people, it makes it very difficult. What this does is whittle down the list of suspects to make it more efficient. What should have happened, as I say, with the perfect alibi, 1,900 kilometers away or miles away, is a pretty good alibi to me. You should work on that sort of principle. The other factors need to come into play, so it should be a useful tool, but not the be-all and end-all.
OK, Andrew Eborn, thank you for joining us on a horrific case that will ask many of us to re-question the productivity and the usefulness of facial recognition technology. Thank you very much.